Okay, we're all present and accounted for, so we can begin. Welcome to our panel, Gender in the Time of #MeToo. And I wonder if there are... Are we done with the testing? Would you all like to just say hello into the mic? And
hello, yes.
Make sure that they're located to your mouths comfortably. Perfect. Okay, so we're here for the panel, Gender in the Time of #MeToo. And I think most of us are aware of the Me Too movement. You all look like people who keep up with the newspapers and the internet and the scandals. But I think that we are all aware of the fact that in Pakistan we have had a problem with gender equality for a very long time, a lot longer than the Me Too hashtag. And we have been working on this issue for years and years and years with mixed results. Today we're going to unpack some of the issues regarding gender equality, gender inequality, the movement as it has been unfolding in Pakistan, what we've been doing wrong, what we're going to try to do to fix it, and where we go from here. So if that isn't too ambitious an agenda for an hour, we'll get started with introductions of my fellow panelists, starting with the left. Haris Gazdar is a senior researcher at the Collective for Social Science Research. He has contributed widely to social science research and policy debates in Pakistan, and he's taught as well as conducted academic research in the UK, India, and this country. Haris has worked as an honorary advisor to research programs, government, and NGOs. He is also interested in innovative methods for making social science research more democratic. Haris has an MSc in economics from the London School of Economics. So a big hand for Haris, please, and welcome. It's early, but I know you can do better than that. Next to Haris, we have Aurélie Salvaire. She is a French social entrepreneur based in Barcelona. She's been working for the past 10 years in the field of social innovation. She's founded and curated different TEDx events, such as TEDx Barcelona Women, TEDx Barcelona Ed, and TEDx Barcelona Change. She's passionate about storytelling, and she's coaching teams and individuals all around the world to better master their own narratives. She has set up the A Factor, that's an events curation advisor, and she's set up events in places as far-flung as Beirut, Nairobi, and Lahore. Mm-hmm. She has also founded the Shift Balance Association, which coaches women leaders in emerging countries in communication and storytelling. Aurélie is with us today, courtesy of the French Embassy in Islamabad and the Alliance Française. So let's have a hand for Aurélie. To my immediate left, we have Kami Sid, who has brought her own fan club with her today. She is Pakistan's first transgender fashion model. Not just Pakistan, but I think the entire Islamic world. And
thank you so much.
She's a very special person. She's a very brave woman, I think. She's a member of the core working group of the Youth Voices Count, which is based in Bangkok. And she's also part of the task force group working on the first ever Transgender Protection Bill 2017 at the national and provincial level. She's represented Pakistan and the LGBTQ community all around the world, in Denmark, Sweden, the Netherlands, Taiwan, and the United States. She's been affiliated with the steering committee of the Asia Pacific Transgender Network, NAZ Pakistan, and the AQS Minority Film Festival. So let's have another round of applause for our very own Kami. Thank you all so much for being here today with us to talk about what is probably the closest issue to my heart, besides literature and books, of course, which is equality, gender equality. And I want to start today's session by emphasizing that we're not here today to talk about whether feminism is necessary to Pakistan or even whether women's empowerment is necessary to Pakistan. We are coming to this conversation today with the knowledge that we have a lot of work to do in this area. I think we're beyond the point of discussing, frankly, whether we need women's empowerment or whether we need feminism. We all know that something is very wrong with the state of gender equality in Pakistan today. And nothing makes this more clear than the dismal fact that Pakistan sits in the second to last position on the Global Gender Gap Index, below countries like Rwanda, Egypt, Bangladesh, and, surprise, even Saudi Arabia. Yes, the grimaces are totally appropriate here. We have performed poorly, breaking down the gender gap report, on all areas: economic participation and opportunity, educational attainment, health and survival, and political empowerment. So I want to ask each one of you to begin with, how did we end up in such a miserable position? Iris, let's start with you.
I think that I will speak on the basis of some research that we have been doing on women's work and women workers in Pakistan. And I think as I got into this research actually by first asking the question about the factors that underpin children's health and women's health. So basically we got into it through health. And then discovered very quickly that the work that women do, especially in the rural areas, it leaves them with very few resources, both in terms of time as well as material resources to look after themselves and for the children to be cared for. So much so that women who basically sustain large sectors of the economy are either unpaid or underpaid, to the extent that their children, women who work, their children are far more likely to be stunted and wasted than the children of women who don't work. So this was actually an important and startling finding which exists, which has also been found in a few other countries, but in Pakistan it's particularly striking, and it's ours is one of the first few studies to show this. Now, once we get to that, so we're basically arriving at it from an indicator of well-being for the population, and we come to the point that actually the mothers and the women in general, their work, both their care work and the work that they do in the economy, is not recognized, it's not paid, and if it is paid, it is underpaid. Now, once we get there, we find that actually a very big part of gender relations in Pakistan, I think everywhere in the world, because we've seen the literature from other countries, but in Pakistan, a very big part of it is actually very active economic exploitation. So I know that a lot of the discussion today will be about gender relations with respect to sexual exploitation. And I think that's a very important discussion to have. But I am just going to add additional angle to that there is a very close connection between sexual exploitation and economic exploitation. So if you have a huge part of the workforce which is not counted at all, according to our labor force survey, around less than 1/5 of the women work. When we do a more sensitive survey, when we are able to actually measure women's work carefully and properly, we find that over 80% of women, adult women, do some work or the other. Right? So there's a huge gap. So in terms of how it is recognized officially, how it is recognized in communities and in families, and by women themselves. And that's a basis for an economy that functions on the strength of women's labor, and which would basically like to brush under this issue under the carpet. If you don't have to pay people, if you don't have to look after their welfare, if you don't have to actually come up to any standards of rights and well-being for half the population, your economy is being subsidized by somebody's labor, and actually is being subsidized by somebody's health. So I very much see my contribution on this panel as somebody who will bring an economic angle to the story, bearing in mind that interpersonal relations, a lot of the issues that have been unearthed by the #MeToo movement have a direct bearing on how economies function and how you can actually keep a huge segment of the population virtually captive and derive free labor from them.
I think that that's actually, rather than thinking of yourself as just adding additional information, I think there's a very vital part of the conversation, the economic exploitation of women and of their labor, and the complete discounting of their contribution. So you said 1/5, could you just talk a little bit more about those figures for us?
So it's very interesting. The labor force survey goes and asks people as to whether or not they did any work in a reference period, usually a week. And people say, and usually they ask this question of the head of the household, who's usually seen as the man. So you have a male enumerator who goes to a house, he meets the male head of the household and he asks him, who in your household did any work in the last week? And then, they come up with this number that, this many people worked, and then you finally aggregate it up. So about 1/5 of the women work. Now, if you turn it around, which a few surveys are doing now, because, we did a lot of very detailed ethnographic work. And the main finding there was that women themselves do not regard what they do as work. But if you say, well, actually, did you do these activities? Did you look after the animals? Did you actually do the cotton picking? Did you harvest the wheat? So all of the things that are invisible to us in the urban areas, but that sustain our economy. Agriculture actually sustains our economy.
Right.
2/3 of our exports are based on the agricultural sector. The dairy sector accounts for about 1/10 of our national income. So all of these sectors are basically run by women, on the basis of women's labor that women themselves don't recognize as work. So they see them as chores. If you say, well, did you do this activity? Yes. If you say, did you do this work? No. So when you have discussions, bargaining, and fights within the household, this is not seen as work. In the communities, it's not seen as work. The government doesn't see it as work. You have entire policies in these sectors where, for example, in the agricultural sector, you have very agricultural departments. Women are never consulted. You have major decisions being taken about the kind of cotton that is grown. It will have direct implications on the number of hours that women will work and the number of hours they will have to look after themselves and their children. But nobody ever thought of asking them. So basically, by airbrushing out the main workforce.
Hang on. We're having a little technical. Try that again?
So by airbrushing out the main contributor to the economy, you are basically short-circuiting all kinds of tricky issues that you have. So I remember, when you introduced us, when we started talking about this, you said that you want to go beyond the #MeToo thing, and you want to see, well, how does the economy function? And I think that this is very critical. So everybody knows that Pakistan has a very poor record in terms of human rights for women, but very few people understand globally that this part of this story is that you can conceal the massive violations of workers' rights that take place for a whole segment of the population. And I think this will carry on until it is called out by somebody, by all of us actually.
I want to come back to you and talk more about this because it needs to be talked about quite a lot. And if there are reporters today making notes on this panel, students, please write this down. This is a source of future research. It's a source of articles that could be written in the newspaper. A lot of exposure of this problem needs to be done through the media. So pay careful attention. I think we're very privileged to have you with us here today to bring this out and to uncover this aspect. Aurélie, I'd like to move to you. You have global experience working with women and getting them to regard themselves, their stories, their existence as important. And so when you look at Pakistan and the work that you are doing here, you work in Lahore, you've come to Karachi, you're going to be doing some work next week. What are the major lessons that come out of your work with our girls and our women?
So one thing that is really surprising for me is that I find more feminists in the lower middle class than in the upper class. I'm going to just make a quick question here. Who self-identifies as a feminist? Raise your hand.
Guys, you can raise your hands too.
Not too bad. Half of you. So the rest of you is unapologetically sexist. Yes? Okay, let's embrace this. So that's for me a question that I ask at each session. Now I know that feminism has a really bad press because we see it like, oh, people who hate men, or people who really don't have good hair or whatever, or people who are too aggressive or whatever they do. But at the end of the day, the definition is very simple. Is I believe that men and women should have the same rights and opportunities. Because if I would bring this to race, if I would say, well, I think that brown people and white people, they should not have the same rights and opportunities. We're different, by nature. I think you're good at what you do. That's fine. Nature made you different, and that's okay if you're unless, you're brown after all. That would be extremely shocking. That would be a diplomatic incident, right? And yet, we do this about gender all the time, and I hear this a lot, and I feel like this is very much still in the minds. So, for me, what I think that we have to get out is our comfort zone. Because the gender roles as we have them now, even if they're extremely limiting for our individual awareness, they're also very comfortable. Come on. Right? Let's be honest about this. So we're going to many gender panels. You're listening to me. You're nodding your head and saying, oh, that's interesting. But what are you doing? What are you doing on a day-to-day basis to balance the world? How are you raising your kids? How are you talking? Which words in Urdu are you using? Which expressions are you using? Which toys are you buying? Which books are you actually reading? I think for me, it's an individual change, really, because I don't think it's going to come from the top. I really don't think it's going to come from the top. It has to come from the bottom up. One thing. And I feel that here there's a kind of feeling that it's the way it is. We can't do much about it. The world has been a patriarchy forever, and we can't do anything about it. It's not true. And that's, for me, what makes it so important. So the work I do is on storytelling. Because one way that a power system maintains itself is through the creation of stories and narratives, which are backing the hierarchy of the system. So all our stories are about how women are bad, how women are lying, how women are driving our men into temptation and sin. And if we keep repeating all these stories, we think the world as it is, it's okay. It's the way it is. Nothing is the way it is. So our work is actually to make things different, and I hear you, Bina. I give this statistic to many workshops that I give in different schools, in different companies. I ask this question, no? And usually the women are the first ones to say, oh no, I'm not a feminist, please don't. Because if not, they know they're gonna face backlash, and they know they're gonna face ostracism, and people criticizing them. So I do believe that we need a reality check on this, because this is making your economy lag so much behind. Having a gender equity parity, let's say, in the economy is boosting the GDP. They say, McKinsey says it would boost, we were talking about economy before, $22 trillion of the global economy. So Pakistani economy would do so much better if we had the women involved in it. So it's not, even if you don't believe in it for the human rights, just believe in it just for your pocket.
I'm going to push back a little on something that you said. First of all, I think what Haris said is that the women are in the economy. They are participating in the economy, but they're completely marginalized. They're completely discounted. They're completely ignored when it comes to any formation of policy at any level. Would you say, what would you say to Aurélie when she says that we need women in the economy, and you are saying they're there, but
I think that we're kind of saying the same thing.
that's not working, is it? We get that working, please?
I think that we're kind of saying the same thing. If women's work were recognized and if it were compensated at a fair rate, at the minimum wage even, I think that there would be a lot of economic changes. I think that there would be a lot of improvement in our economy. I think we'll be valuing a resource properly. And I think that we'd be doing many, many things differently. I think we'd be bringing up families better. So I think that the fact that a lot of work that is critical for this society to move, to function, is not seen as work, it's not even seen at all, makes for an economy which is also at a very low level. It's a little bit like, to use the analogy that you had talked about earlier, that if you had an economy where half of the labor were slave laborers, you'd actually not have a very sophisticated economy, right? So apart from the fact that it's a brutal thing, and it's a kind of a violation of a human right that must not exist, the fact is that you are actually not realizing the potential of individuals or of the whole collective. So the fact that women's work is not acknowledged as work, and the fact that it is not seen as being part of the mainstream economy, it actually is part and parcel of the problem of the economy being at a very low level. Right? I actually believe that if we had fair wages in sectors like cotton, we may not actually have a very big cotton economy. A lot of economists believe that Pakistan is kind of stuck somewhere in this cotton textile economy. It should move away from there. But as long as you're able to pay women slavery wages to do that work, you will have that sector. Right?
And as well, the fact that women are here, but they're not heard. So it's like, yes, they are here, but they are paid less. They don't have access to leadership positions. So yes, they are present. But
well, I think it's very interesting that you compare the problem to a slavery-based economy. And it's one of my theories, as somebody who writes a lot about women's issues. Women are actually the slave class of Pakistan. They actually are, and I think this is part of the problem why things aren't shifting. Because it's a matter of convenience
it's
for the
comfortable.
class that is on top, the gender that is on top, to have actually a slave class that is laboring for them, that is doing all the domestic work, that is doing so much of the farm work to which they can lay claim then to the wages, so on and so forth. Would you say that's a fair comparison?
Yes,
Now, either of you, whoever wants to answer the question. Kami.
Kami, what do you
I want to
think?
get to Kami actually formally, but does anyone want to
can
answer
jump
the
in.
possibility or the idea? And the second thing that I want to point out as well is that you said, Aurélie, that things will not change from the top. And I want to pick a bone with that, merely because I don't agree with it. I think that things need to change from the top. Where in law, in legislation? I'm going to quote, let me just make this one point. I'm going to quote a study that came out from the preeminent medical journal, The Lancet. And they conducted research in Muslim countries, including through the Aga Khan University here. They found that on average, Muslim majority countries performed worse in 5 governance indicators, including control of corruption, government effectiveness, political stability or absence of terrorism, regulatory quality, and rule of law. The authors find that legislation and policies specifically protecting women were insufficient in Muslim majority compared to non-Muslim majority countries, particularly around domestic violence, marital rape, emotional violence, and physical violence.
Of course. I agree with you, but how do the laws happen? The laws happen because the people ask for them. So when we talk about Iceland, like one of the icons of gender equity, how did the women in Iceland get equity? They stopped working one day in 1974. They blocked the country. Imagine if the 100 million women in Pakistan would stop working just one day. The country would be paralyzed. And then we could talk. Then we could talk about implementing the laws, about the policies, about what has to be changed. But we have so much power. so much power because we are doing so much work.
I think women fear physical violence. I
Of
think
course.
the reason women would not actually strike in the manner that you're describing is because they would fear being beaten or
Yes.
even killed.
Because they are divided. I mean, what did the Britishers do when they came to the subcontinent? How did they get the power? They divided and ruled. Well, that's what patriarchy is doing. It's dividing our women in different families, structures, and we are held in these different family structures, and we don't get out of them, and we don't unite, right? There are all these theories about women are bickering between themselves. They're not. It's not in our DNA to be jealous. It's because of the power system, and we know we have access to a very limited power system. So the sisterhood, no, that we talk about, which is so powerful, I agree with you. Yes, we fear this backlash.
And I think that the sisterhood worked very well in our political system when women of all the parties got together, and I really wish Nafisa was here with us today.
But I mean, if people like Camille are
Let me
like...
finish. I really wish that Nafisa was here to talk about that political transcending party lines in order to enact some of the pro-women laws that we have. That, now we'll get to Kami, saving the best for last.
I mean, yes, she can talk about the fear of backlash.
So, Kami, I want to ask you, when we think of somebody like you, we think of inclusivity, and I think that is an important part of the gender movement, the inclusivity, because basically patriarchy means taking one gender, putting it on top of everybody else, be they women, self-identified, cis, trans, so on and so forth. I would like to ask you, where does the trans movement, in which you have been so active and so visible, where does it fit into the larger movement of gender equality in Pakistan today?
Thank you so much, Bina ji. And first of all, thank you so much, OUP, कि मुझे invite किया. And people like me, I think we all are same. It's all depend how we identify ourselves. I identify myself as a transgender woman, which is big thing for me and for my parents as well. Let me start with one thing, that gender is in your head and sex is between in your legs. Is it or not? Are you all with me? Gender is in our head and sex is between in our legs. अगर हम यही बात सोच लें तो आज हम कहाँ होते हैं? But no, हम तो हमेशा शलवार के अंदर ही झागना चाहते हैं कि क्या है उसके. Women in political parties, and we are talking about economy and all kind of thing. Oh God, women in politics, what they're doing? They just get ready themselves and go in the assembly and sit and talk whatever their party want to do. Really? And person like me, I'm a transgender woman, and I'm living in that patriarchal society जहाँ पर रातों को वही मर्द हमें आके चाटते भी हैं और सुबह वही हमें जूते लगा रहे होते हैं, which is so mean. Being a transgender woman, I face lots of like fear, but I am fearless. People say like तुम कभी भी कहीं भी निकल जाती हो रात को, but it's really important because we as a transgender woman, I'm a transgender woman, male to female. It's really important to identify yourself. Either आप काले हैं, गोरे हैं, लंबे हैं, मोटे हैं, but please identify yourself in which and what boxes you are happy. Like you are Bina, like you are say like person like you, I am what I am. I don't have to explain anyone else like what Kami is it. Kami is Kami. Either is Kami is a transgender man, woman, औरत है, मर्द है, किसी में कैसे जा रही है, कैसे पहन रही है. It's my basic human right. And country like Pakistan, as you say, like हम बिल्कुल लीस्ट पे हैं और हम बिल्कुल नीचे की जगह पर हैं सऊदी अरब के साथ जहाँ पर जेंडर इक्वालिटी नहीं है और हम कितनी दफ़ा अपने बच्चों से बात करते हैं जेंडर के हवाले से. How many cases we have recently in our society? Like me, at the age of 10, I was abused, like someone abused me. He was in my neighbor and I don't know about my gender identity at that time. I was so feminine that I am today. It's not because कि मैं transgender बन गई हूँ और रात को सोई और सुबह उठ के transgender बन गई. No. It's a big journey. I'm 27 right now. I identify myself at the age of 22. और लोगों को 60 साल उम्र लग जाते हैं. चांदनी आ जाती है बालों में आइडेंटिफाई करते हुए कि वो किस बॉक्स में खुश थे. Because of this society. The society not give us a chance to identify ourselves because society हमें कहती है कि चुप रहो. Our parents, like my mother, when I doing modeling, and she say, "Why you're doing this? Because you're ruining our family name." I say, "Mom, I'm just doing modeling. It's not a porn movie. It's just a modeling. I have to came out. I have to came out as like a model because nobody from my community came out as like this. I'm a privileged one. I have to do this. So that's why I did.
Thank you for those very strong words, those very brave words. You touched on so many important points, and I want to pick them up. And there's too many, but I think your question about, you're talking about putting people in boxes as imposed upon them versus the idea that one is able to choose one's own identity, or at least to choose which identity you want to put yourself into. There's something very important that happened today. Just today, the Senate approved changes to the transgender rights bill, something that you have been in consultation with them about, that there is not necessary for a medical board examination for a transgender person to be declared as female or male. They are, in fact, the gender that they perceive and identify themselves to be. This is a huge, huge step. And although we do see the argument that, well, transgender people, it's a small percentage of society, how much does it really affect us? Is it as important as women who are 52% of the population? But I think that these steps towards inclusivity are what will make the difference in our society. And Kami, can you tell us, you had a hand in this by your advice. Are we on the right track? What else could we be doing?
Okay. It's the first time in Pakistan that Senate and the Assembly and the parliamentarian group involve us in our own bill, Transgender Protection Policy Bill 2017. And not only me, we all transgender from all over this country. We involved in this bill, and we told them each and every our problem. Like, we are the community, we know about what actually we are facing right nowadays in Pakistan. So the bill has passed in Senate, and we are very happy. But bill has just passed. It will be implemented or not? I don't know.
Always the
but
question.
it's a big step from our government that they can identify ourselves as a transgender woman. But
Fantastic.
the issue is there. The issue is poverty. The issue is education. The issue is employment. We have 2% quota for, government of Pakistan have 2% quota for transgender people, but where is it? मुझे लगता है वो हवाओं में ही कहीं पर है. तो Bina ji, basically the main thing is that, first of all, like our institute, like educational system, they have to give chance to transgender community to come over there and to sit with them, to talk with them, because एक बच्चा बहुत मासूम होता है, छोटा होता है, और जब बच्चा स्कूल में होता है, और मैं हमेशा एक बात कहती हूँ, जब उसकी टीचर उसके पेरेंट्स से शिकायत कर सकती है तो उसकी जेंडर आइडेंटिटी के बारे में ही बात कर सकती है, which is very important, what I believe.
Aurélie, let's go back to you. You are launching a wonderful book.
Yes.
Could you show us the cover? I don't know if we have a slide.
Balance the world.
Balance the world. And an important part of your work towards gender equality is addressing. Do we have the slide, the cover of the book at all, so we can see this? I don't mind. I'll hold it up for you.
Yeah.
Hand it over. It's a beautiful, beautiful cover. Can you all see this, everybody? It's called Balance the World. Is it available?
Yeah, it's available for free online. So
Online, it's free. And is there going to be a print version?
there's a print version on Amazon, but if you want to download it in version PDF, it's on the website called shiftbalance.org. So you just download it and enjoy and share it. So it's
Tell us what this book is about.
this book is about my own frustration. No, I grew up in a very patriarchal family in the south of France. So it's not only in Pakistan. Patriarchy is everywhere, believe me. And I was quite frustrated as a child when I could see I had a very feminist mom, but every time she was trying to say things like, "We should not talk about hitting your women in front of my son," my grandfather was really angry at her. No, so you would see that she really had a lot of fights which didn't work. And when I grew up, I was like, okay, I want to make something very practical, because when we talk about these topics, they look so huge that we don't know what to do, right? We say, yes, it's bad. Yes, there is gender inequity. But what can I do? Either it seems that it's the way it is for so many years, or I'm just one tiny piece in a huge system. So the book is about this. First, the book is it's feminism for dummies, right? It's like people
I
who
need that
don't
book.
really know what feminism is or have all these ideas. I make it very simple with very simple graphics, diagram, etc. There are a lot of images. If you don't like to read, it's fine.
Donald Trump needs this book.
Yeah, see? You would love it.
Lots of
I should
pictures.
send it to him, I think. So yeah, and then basically I took 15 topics from leadership to education to violence to sex, but also manhood. And for each I give easy figures, like simple ones, so that people can't deny it, because I have so many people denying it and saying, oh, but now it's okay. So I'm like, okay, I give the figures, but especially I give solutions that I've seen around the world, and I classified them by tactics. So I don't think we have all the same tactics. Me, as you have seen, I'm pretty confrontational and I've got a lot of energy.
I would have never guessed.
Right, Bina, you know me, and some tactics work for me. But some others are more about infiltrating, about reversing the roles, about humor. So we should all use the tactics that are good for us. And then I give advice on what you can do on an individual basis. So yeah, the idea was to make a very easy manual for people who want to implement some change in terms of gender equity, and to have especially a new generation of gender activists. So we teach in different schools so that the new generation comes and make a difference with the tools they have, how they did in Me Too. Now everybody can set up a Facebook page, a newsletter, a YouTube channel, a blog, to have their say on what is really motivating them.
Balance the world, everybody. Look for this book online, download it, read it, give it to your girls, give it to your boys. Haris, I'm going to ask you a cheeky question as the only man on this panel. How do you feel when you hear people talking about the unfair treatment of women in Pakistan? Do you, as a man, feel upset, threatened, disturbed, guilty? What are your thoughts on how men are supposed to feel about the Me Too movement, about the awakening of women and their empowerment? Give us a guide to how a man doesn't lose his mind in this world.
I have the privilege of being brought up by a woman, my mother, who was herself a feminist and a writer and a poet, and who had some influence on her peers when she was active. So I think that my own experiences and my own instincts in this area are, I think none of those responses would come to me. I think that for me, it's a problem that we have these levels of inequality.
Yes.
And I think that it's a problem if we have these kinds of inequalities and exploitation on any basis. Very often, actually, these things also intersect. So, I mean, we talked a little bit about slavery, and we feel very angry when we see blatant forms of exploitation and oppression. That's partly what the hashtag #MeToo movement has done, that, it basically enrages us, because it is an outrage. Public figures, people who you respected, people who were seen to be icons, they turn out to be in a particular way. But I think that we basically have to...
We haven't done this to you on purpose. We're not sort of sabotaging you as the man.
It's okay. We shall rise above that. I think...
Oh dear, maybe we did.
Oh my God.
It's a safe space.
I think...
Oh no, can we just
ये मैंने
exchange?
पकड़ा था तो सही था.
हाँ, बस सही है.
हाँ. I think that we need to basically create lots of situations through discussion, through experiences, through culture, to basically create a sense of outrage around various forms of inequality. And I think that we should feel upset if in our society certain norms of inequality are tolerated and are accepted as being okay. So I feel anger sometimes and outrage when I see reports, and a lot of the reporting around cases is also made to, it does actually make you very outraged. That's part of the power of the social media, that images and stories that outrage you, they actually start trending and they become viral, and you also get to see them. So I think, and that's fine. But I think there's a lot that we don't feel outraged about. So my view is that, there is a lot in our society that we should feel outraged about, and we should expand that sphere so that things that are seen as norms, a lot of inequalities that are seen as norms, that space reduces. And a lot of things that are seen as, a lot of equalities should be seen as norms.
Do we need to re-examine what it means to be a man in Pakistan?
I think constantly. I think that constantly we need to re-examine that. I mean, my own personal anecdote is that I had the privilege of traveling and staying in India for a while, and with a bunch of friends we went out to see a movie. I'd just been in Karachi and gone to see a film, and then the next week I was with some friends in India, a mixed group of young men and women. And I was jumpy throughout while I was in the cinema. That I am somehow responsible for the safety, security and the honor of the women in my group. And when finally, after a few minutes, I discovered that none of the other men were actually that bothered, I realized that I was carrying an extra burden. I was not actually enjoying the moment. So actually, we carry a lot. So we put a lot of burden. I mean, these kinds of inequalities are a burden on society as a whole. So there are huge burdens on women and children, but there are also big burdens on men. So this way of being, where you're constantly on the lookout, you're constantly on the watch out, everything is a threat, everything has to be guarded against, and then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Things do become threats. And then people are rushed, they are sent back into their homes, and you have constant concerns about safety and security.
Sure.
And these divisions of the sphere between public and private become more solidified. So all of that actually imposes big burdens, big psychological burdens on everyone. It imposes lots of physical burdens on women, but it also imposes a lot of psychological burden on men.
I want to just point out that Aurélie has explored this subject in a beautiful short film called Mard Ban, Be a Man. Are you going to screen that next week at the Allianz?
Not at the Allianz. On Monday, we are screening it at T2F, Monday evening. So yeah.
So I urge all of you who are wondering about this question, what does it mean to be a man in Pakistani society? Come to T2F, the details will be online, and watch Aurélie's film, and with Haris's very moving testimony, I think, about what it means to have to constantly shoulder this burden. It illustrates that patriarchy really, it seems to privilege men, but it actually hurts them. Kami, I want to give you the last word. It's so important for us to realize that the transgender community faces probably the most extreme forms of violence against women. Would you like to say a few words about that? I don't like to end on a sour note, but I think it's important that we understand the reality of what transgender people live with. And then we will move on to the question and answer session. I know you have lots of questions. I can see all of you. So Kami, please give us a few words about what it's like to live as a transgender person.
Only a few words? Okay.
Yes, only a few.
So, like transgender women in Pakistan, we are facing lots of difficulties in these days as well. Like in KPK and rural areas of Pakistan, like in Punjab and Sindh. Like people can beat us easily, they can harass us easily, and they can rape us easily, and they can kill us easily. Because we are very vulnerable. Because no one can talk about trans issues in Pakistan in a broader way, like in media as well. What media role? They just only go and report what happened, but not about what is the solution after this. And what about the NGOs doing right nowadays in Pakistan? Only updating their Facebook? Please don't do this. Don't update your Facebook. Do something in on ground.
What should they do?
We need people like you sitting in front of me. Please don't say हमारे पास आए, हमसे बैठे, हमसे बात करें, हमसे पूछे हमारे क्या मसले हैं, हम बताएंगे आपको हमारे क्या मसले हैं.
And then what should they do with that information?
What about which information? What you're talking
When
about?
you are talking about the issues that you face,
That
what can we
they
do?
are the people who can write, who can like they can stand with us, na? Even we are only like government of Pakistan say there are only 10,000 transgender people in Pakistan. This is bullshit. We are more than like 10,000. And we as a transgender people, like I lead my community as a leader, as a leader, as a privileged person. Like being a transgender woman, doing sex work and doing begging and doing dancing is not an easy job. It's a very hard job. When you go out in the night and dance in front of lots of men and they can harass you and they can beat you for the sake of some money.
And I think the misconception is that they like this. No, they don't have the choice.
No, transgender
There's no
can be
choice.
everything like me, a model, engineer, doctor and a teacher. It's all about opportunity. हमने time ही नहीं दिया, हमने उनको platform ही नहीं दिया, हमने अपने बारे में सोचा कि आज मेरे बेटे की जॉब लग जाए, बेटी की जॉब लग जाए. बेटा या बेटी के अलावा भी घर में कोई और होता है.
Well said.
हम जैसे लोग भी like they are talking about man and woman. Why not they are saying man, woman and transgender? Why not? True. They have to say this. Why not? So we have to start from this day that we have to talk about not only transgender, about LGBTI issues in Pakistan. We have to talk about sexuality as well right nowadays because people like हम लोगों को इतना चांस ही नहीं देते कि वो अपने उस खोल से बाहर आ सकें. That you're talking about boxes. That क्या boxes ज़रूरी हैं? हाँ, sometimes ज़रूरी हैं. मुझे अपना राइट हासिल करने के लिए एक ट्रांसजेंडर का आइडेंटिटी कार्ड बनाना पड़ेगा जो कि जरूरी है. समटाइम वी नीड बॉक्सेस बट उस बॉक्स में रहते हुए क्या मुझे वो राइट मिले? अभी तक तो नहीं मिले, क्या पता आगे मिल जाए. थैंक यू सो मच.
I'm going to put an end to the panel discussion here by drawing the conclusion I think we can draw from the talk, but there's questions after this, that achieving gender balance in our society, it needs to look beyond just trends and hashtags. We need to focus on policy, on prescriptive measures, firm political positions, and solidarity on gender equality, because it's not going to come about by fighting each other, but by joining hands together, men, women, trans, everybody. We need to stay away from what's cosmetic and turn towards what's solid, replicable, and scalable in our very diverse and populous nation. That's my message to all of you. We're going to open the floor up now to questions. Is there a mic? Is there a mic? Do we have
If you want to
assistants
ask
with
something.
mics? Yes. If you've got a question, keep your hand raised. The people with
The lady
mics
is here.
will get to you. Okay, there's a lady here who is very eager to. So why don't we, if we can have a few mics circulating in the audience. No, this lady over here first. And I will indicate who will ask the question. No, right here, right here.
Assalamu alaikum wa
Walaikum
rahmatullah.
salam.
Good morning to everybody.
A question, if I may, just a question, no commentary, just a question.
Our question is, why can't our transgender youth become part of the peacekeeping army?
Why can't our transgender youth become part of the peacekeeping army?
Yeah.
I think the question is why not?
Good, thank you.
Why
Thank
Why
you.
not?
Why not? Thank you for
We
that
can be.
question.
Give a chance, lady. We can be a part of peace, harmony and everything.
You're an army because you cannot sexually assault anybody.
Okay.
That's why.
Thank you so much. Love you.
Wonderful question. I think somebody over here had a question first, and then we'll come to you. Is there more than one mic? Can we get more than one mic? Because a lot of people have questions.
There was talk about top-down approach, bottom-up approach. I believe in terms of the top-down approach
Yes.
in the Islamic Republic of Pakistan,
Yeah.
where we have bodies like the Islamic Council of ICC, where there's only apparently one woman member. When they pass out, we can't even pass out legislations to legalize minimum marriage age, where they strike it down. Like religion always becomes a hurdle in progress, especially in women's rights in Pakistan. So in terms of legislation, what are the solutions, or what can NGOs and do to?
That's a great question.
Actually.
So in the light of the fact that we are an Islamic republic, the Council of Islamic Ideology has a huge influence on the legislation. I have great hope for the new director, who is Dr. Qibla Ayaz. His name is but he has been saying some very interesting things that give me the indication that I think things are going to change At least as far as the CII is concerned. Whether it can happen or not is another story, but you might want to look him up and look up what he's been saying for the past few days. He has promised to do work on raising the age of marriage for girls. He has outruled the idea that there should be a public execution for rapists of children. And so I think we need very guided and balanced voices to keep us grounded even as we're working for radical change. And I think from that we will end up with something that looks reformist, that looks progressive. But there's always going to be two extremes in society. We are just that kind of nation. I hope that answers your question. Does anyone have anything to add to that?
No, I just want to ask, is there, and there is probably, but any organization of Muslim feminists in Pakistan? Because I know that, for example, in Malaysia, they set up Musawa, no? Which is like an organization of feminists who want to reform somehow the interpretation of Islam, but with also the women perspective in mind. So we hear a lot of time that feminists are from the West, or that they atheist, or whatever. So what are the feminist movements here within Islam? Are there any?
So the feminist movements that came out of the 70s and 80s, and specifically the dictatorship of General Zia, Women's Action Forum, War Against Rape, so on and so forth, they work within the Islamic framework. They had to work with what was presented to them, which was quite a repressive Islamist type agenda. They keep a balance between the secular movement. Not all Pakistanis are Muslim, as we know.
Yeah.
So there's a big balancing act to do, but we don't have actually a collective of specifically Muslim identified feminists, and that's something that can easily be worked on. It's my personal opinion that there's not a lot that's incompatible between Islam and feminism. There is Islamic feminism throughout the world, and it's a matter of bringing out different facets of the movement.
Yeah.
Yes, Haris.
See, there are lots of laws and policies and programs that really, by no stretch of the imagination, would have to come under the CII. I can give you an example of how just small changes in the way that the system works can create huge changes on the ground. This whole business of the top and the bottom. When Pakistan first thought about creating a social protection program, a cash transfer program for poor people, it was initially thinking that, like every other program, the cash will go to the male head of the household, right? But a political decision was taken that the program will target the women.
Are you referring to BISP?
That's right,
The
to the
Benazir
Benazir Income Support Program.
Correct.
So for a number of political reasons, the program then was targeted towards women. And it didn't have to be referred to any Islamic council. It's become a part of the legislation because it was passed by the National Assembly and the Senate. And it didn't have to go through any of these, it didn't raise any of the religious hackles. So a lot of the sensitivities around gender are, they're raised by religious people. But there are lots of things we can do that completely bypass that. One law that I would like to see is a law that will lead to a recognition of women agricultural workers. I really I can't imagine any circumstance in which the Council of Islamic Ideology would actually have a say or would have an adverse view on that.
Oh, you never know. I don't put it past them to come up with some objection to anything.
Yeah.
That's just their role. Yes, you have a question here.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
First of all, I want to introduce myself. Sir, excuse me.
Question.
I will, because it's necessary. Yes. My name is Asif Baloch, and before asking the question, let me clear that being an individual, I identify myself as a liberal and a feminist who is always concerned about the welfare of the women and men of the society.
We need more men like you,
Yes,
sir.
thank you. My question is basically that as few days ago, during an event when a woman says that mankind, the Canadian head of state says, please call it peoplekind. I do not have any issue. Whether you call it peoplekind or you call it womankind. I would love to call it womankind. I'm not saying that I have any issue with these terminologies. But my question is this. On one hand, the leaders of the world who are dominant, who are developed, who belong to the developed countries, they are making issues of the terminologies.
Yes.
But on other hand, they are selling weapons to the countries.
What's
like.
your question?
My question is this: that on one hand they make issues of the terminologies.
Yes.
On other hand, they are selling weapons to countries like Saudi Arabia and other that will be used in the genocide of the innocent human beings, men, women, and children. So why, if they are so much concerned about the welfare of women, why they are not concerned about the welfare of those individuals against them? Those weapons will be used that they are selling to the countries like Saudi Arabia or other countries. Canada is trading, has trade with Saudi
I
Arabia.
really wish we had the Canadian Prime Minister with us
No,
today to
no,
answer that question, because only he can tell
Actually,
you.
my question is that,
Okay,
as
I
ma'am
think we
said,
got
We
it.
are out of time for
One minute,
no,
one
no.
minute.
Can we take the night?
ma'am said that when British were there, they hijacked.
This is the second
Okay, thank
question.
you.
Can you take the night? Thank you so much. No, this lady here in the front in the green. She's been waiting for a while, and then we'll come back to you if we have time. Stay right there. Stay right there.
This is just a clarification. Women's Action Forum identifies itself as a secular organization that does not believe that Islamic laws should be a part of the country. During the period, historically speaking, of the period of Ziaul Haq, it did work with Islamic scholars because it needed to. It was a strategic move, and as you say, there is space there as well. And I think it is important that that space be used to the advantage of women, but it was just a point of
Are
clarification.
you a member of the Women's Action Forum?
I am a
madam?
founding member of the Women's Action Forum.
You deserve the biggest hand of applause. You have created space for today's women, and we salute you and your contribution.
Here?
Oh, yes, you've been waiting a long time. How many minutes do we have left?
3 minutes.
Last two questions. You and then you, sir.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Johanna. My
Hold the
question
mic
is-
close to your mouth.
My question is, I'm a little unclear. I've always been a little unclear about the notion of feminism. I just want to ask, is feminism, because the talk that was done was about feminism fighting for equal rights, I want to ask if it's instead fighting for women's rights, because I strongly believe that men and women cannot have equal rights. Men can't have maternity leave. Women can't go topless outside. I mean, men can do that. Women can get maternity leave, but that does not mean that men and women are equal and both of them should get the same treatment or should get the same sort of societal balance. Is it fighting for women's rights in the sense that I should have the right to work wherever I like or proceed however I like, and a man should be at par? Or is it fighting for equal rights, which means that a man and a woman are basically the same? Because we've not been created the same. So how
Thank
can
you
we fight
so
for
much for that question. Aurélie, I'm going to let you answer that one.
Okay, so, and I'll answer to the men as well. Yeah, it's always the debate, no, that comes here. So feminism doesn't believe that we are the same, identical, right? We're not the same. We have different bodies. We have different natural possibilities, etc. But we do believe within feminism that we should have the same rights and opportunities. So on the paternity leave, I don't agree. I think men should get paternity leave, because if they get paternity leave, they will spend more time with their children, which is better for the children, and the women will reintegrate the workforce better. So the idea is really, we're not equal in the sense that we're not the same, we're not identical. Sometimes we misunderstand equal by identical. We're not identical, but yes, we should have the same rights and opportunities. The laws should apply the same way, the pay should be the same, the opportunities, professional, etc., should be the same. And for the men and before, I mean, I kind of agree with him. As white people, we're pretty hypocritical, right? Let's be honest. We preach one thing and we do another thing.
The white people in the audience are
So,
clapping.
I
That's
agree. I agree when I come back to France, yes, because the gender patriarchy is very linked with capitalism, right? So yes, we can say, oh, patriarchy is bad, but capitalism is very good, right? Which is not the case, right? So I just wanted to say I agree with the hypocrisy that sometimes we...
Last question, absolutely. And make it fast, please.
Sure. We've had a feminist. Her name was Bibi Khadija. We've had a feminist in
first
Islam.
feminist,
First
right?
Muslim feminist.
Okay. Islam is a pluralist religion. You know.
What's your question?
My question is simply this: is it going to take an economic independence on the part of women in Pakistan to finally turn the tide, just like they did against the scourge of Catholic Church in Philippines? And basically,
Khadija didn't wait for the Prophet to have economic empowerment.
Exactly. But I mean,
she gave it to him.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's how it.
Would you like to answer that question? Because it deals with economics. Time up.
I don't believe that the one thing causes the other. I don't believe in a functionalist kind of view. I think that all aspects of equality are important in their own right. So I don't think that economic empowerment by itself can lead to social empowerment or the other way around. I think that politics is important. Politics is important because in any society and economy, it provides you with the spaces to create change. So I think political empowerment is probably usually an important stepping stone for other kinds of empowerment. But I think that you cannot sequence them. And you can't say one is, I mean, you can't even measure them up against each other. I think that all of them are important. And I think all of them have to be pursued at the same time.
I want to thank my fantastic audience, my fantastic panelists, Haris Gazdar, Aurélie Salvaire, Kami Sid. This has been an enlightening, lively, and for me, a very moving discussion. Thank you so much for all of you being part of it, and we'll see you next time.
Very much.